Peace everyone, Unmask Art here. Welcome back to the Pastel tutorial. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. I'm having a good day. It's kind of cold here. It's getting real cold real quick here in Poland, so trying to stay warm is about all I'm doing. Anyways, we are going to be starting on all of the other bricks, the bridge and little sidewalk area. So I'm just going to jump right into it. And as usual, all questions are welcome. What I'm going to do to help preserve some of the line art is I'm going to take the 760 color. I'm just going to go over a few of the lines in the details here so that as I'm filling it in, I don't get lost with those little details. Just a few little lines, doesn't take a lot. And as usual, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Hey there, Carol. These are not oil pastel. These are hard pastel, chalk pastel, Carbothello pastel pencils specifically. Hey there, Diane. Susan, Claire, Cherry, Anushka, see you. David, Alexandru. Like I said, I'm just gonna go over some of the line art here. Be surprised if I even got this far in filling up the bricks, but might as well. I think I can maybe do this line here. And yeah, let's go ahead and do the dock and the stairs here. And that should do it. So now I will take the base color. This is the 700 gray. Most of you following along should be pretty familiar with this color. This is how we started the bricks on the house. We're going to do the same exact procedure for the matching bricks. Just a nice solid base layer of this color here. Hey there, Jesse. This is definitely the easiest part of the project. Just sort of working with one color. No technical complexities when it comes to this. So it's times like this where I'm just working with one color. I tend to just shut my brain off and not really think about anything. This is more of the meditative portion of the projects that I do. Pretty universal as well. You know, there's really no instance in the creative process that there isn't a stage that is just so basic and so simple that you can't just find the time to relax while you're doing it. So this is the perfect time to ask questions, bring up topics that you want me to discuss, all that stuff. Because we'll be here for a little while. One of the things that I did, I actually did it yesterday. I don't know if anybody noticed, it's very subtle change. But you noticed how much softer the shadow is, the shadows that I have from my pencil and my hand and everything. I I wasn't 100% satisfied with my lighting setup. For those who've been following me for a long time, probably know that I've changed my light setup for my studio like a million times. And I've been using these LED panels for the better part of a year now, and I like them a lot. They always just seemed a bit too harsh, and so I just took regular computer paper and put it right over top of them to work like a diffuser. And I gotta say, it's a lot better on my eyes. It is a lot better. I just see it so much clearer without like any excess glare, or I can actually look up at my monitors without being blinded by spotlights. So really nice. I was about to order some diffusers for the light, and then I just sort of Googled diffusers and came across a few alternatives, one of which was just slapping a piece of computer paper over top of the lights. And it works like a charm. Perfect. Oh, hey there, Ozzy. Can you use solvent for pastel? Yeah, I get that question quite often. Uh, the truth is, you can totally use solvent for blending pastel, but I just can't think of a reason why you would need to, because pastels are so easy to blend. They're so they're just so easy to move across the paper, and you're not going to see it. You won't get any added benefit to their ability to blend by adding a solvent. The only thing that you'll do is have to wait to work on your project. So once you add that wet solvent, you're gonna have to wait for the paper to dry completely before you can start working on it. So it won't save you any time. It won't give you a better result, um, but it will make you sit there waiting for the paper to dry. And uh, pastel matte is rather absorptive, so I just I just can't, in good conscience, recommend any type of wet solvent method with the use of pastels on pastel matte. I've tried it. I tested several wet solvents. I mean, you can just use regular old um, alcohol, just rubbing alcohol that evaporates really, really quickly. It doesn't have a smell, and it works. You can blend. It works perfectly fine. It's just so unnecessary. Um, oh, cool. I'm glad you can see the difference. Yeah, it's much. Everything is much softer. I feel like the colors are much more well balanced as well. Yeah. I can see the colors better in person because the I had the lights just so direct on the paper. Sometimes a bright light would get my eyes like really tired. Looking up at my monitor, my pupils would constrict because the light shining right in my eyes. And then when I get down to the paper, my eyes have to readjust, and just going back and forth would be a pain. But Now it's just great. Do I prefer polychromos or Prismacolor? That's a good question. Um, Now, when I do my tutorials, I pretty much exclusively use Prismacolor because Prismacolor is a really great beginner pencil if you want to get into colored pencils. And so I lean towards that. But the funny thing about Polychromos is that uh, I had the full set of Polychromos for years and I despised them. I just, if you go back, if you go back in some of my videos, the drawing journals where I just sort of sit there, draw, and talk, and you happen to come across somebody asking about polychromos, you'll hear me say that I just don't like them. I don't. I would. My complaints were that I don't like that all the colors are translucent. It makes it hard to get good coverage. Blah 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 blah. A bunch of other stuff. Um, but I figured out why I didn't like them so much, and it's because I just wasn't using the paper that is conducive to them working on well. Uh, with polychromos, I highly recommend you stay away from slick paper. Anything smooth, like a Bristol, you really don't want to go any smoother than a vellum, and that's what I sort of discovered. Was it last year? No, yeah, maybe it was last year. Yeah, it was like last year around this time frame actually that I started experimenting with them a little bit because I just I sort of transitioned from my smoother papers to a little bit rougher, especially vellum, and I was using Stonehenge vellum, and so I did a little test project with the polychromos, and I just really figured that out. I solved the puzzle as to why I was not liking them and never liked the results. And since then, I really do like the polychromos pencils a lot. But the techniques that I use are different. With polychromos, I much prefer to dry blend using a paper stump because with the rougher papers, you can use them and have them act almost exactly like graphite. And you just use the paper blender, the same paper blender that I use with pastels, uh, to blend them, and it just looks great. It looks very different than Prismacolor in my opinion, but still looks awesome. And then with Prismacolor, uh, they're quite a bit more flexible on paper. I still like to use the smoother papers with Prismacolor on occasion. And then, of course, I blend with solvent. Both are great pencils, and I would recommend both. I have a short series that I did in the art club where sort of I go over the foundations of color theory and color mixing and sort of my thought process with working with limited palettes by using the 12 pack of polychromos pencils. We did 4 projects, increasing in difficulty with just the 12 pack of polychromos, and it was a fun little series. And I know that a handful of people that followed that small series, it was their first time ever using polychromos and using dry blending method, and the overwhelming consensus was that they liked the pencils, which was great because they sort of got to skip the phase that I went through where I didn't like the polychromos and I didn't understand why anybody did like it. So let's see. Have I watched the Cruella movie? I did. It was yeah, it was fine. I mean, I didn't understand why there needed to be an origin story for Cruella. Felt like that was totally unnecessary. But Emma Stone could do no wrong in my eyes. She's one of my favorites. I My wife is fully aware of my Emma Stone crush, so I don't know how you can't love her as an actress. She's just great. Everything that she's ever done, I've enjoyed. So Cruella was Cruella was fine. The story was a bit meh, little bit predictable, but overall, it, the bigger question is why do we need a Cruella origin story? I mean, I was a huge fan of 101 Dalmatians when I was a kid. I probably watched that movie 60 times. And it didn't, truthfully, just didn't feel like it had anything to do with that. It's just like Disney's just, they can't come up with anything original anymore, so they just take whatever good stuff they had 20, 30 years ago and steal as much as they possibly can. um, let's see. If I happen to miss any of your questions, by all means, just ask it again. I'll try to keep up. Oh, hey there, Sketch. Oh, thank you, Art Journey. Yeah, the pastel pencil review is definitely one of my better videos. If I didn't have to buy the supplies, I would do more reviews and that way. I thought about doing a review like that for colored pencils, but I would need I would need to probably invest in the Derwent colored pencils, and truthfully, I don't even want to. I mean, I am so exclusive to my Prismacolor at this point that even my luminance pencils just sit in my basement. They're not even in my studio anymore. It's been a long time since I've even used my luminance pencils. Actually, I just got another email today reminding me that I don't even have the additional luminance pencils that came out last year. I think they came out, and I haven't even considered for a second uh, ordering those additional. It's like 12 or 14 new colors or something. I don't even know for the luminance set. I haven't even looked to see what the colors even look like. Now, on a professional level, if I was doing commission work or whatever, or if I was just doing artwork for fun, then I would probably use my luminance set because of their light fast quality, and uh, generally they do work. They feel a little bit different than Prismacolor, mildly different, but not so different that for my colored pencil tutorials, I want people to think that they got to go out and spend $400 on a set of colored pencils. Like that's just absurd. I think Karen Dash sort of overuses their name to unnecessarily charge more for their art supplies because they've never struck me to be that significantly better. and I used them for years. So yeah, I'm not too big a fan of Derwent. I've never used the Derwent colored pencils, but I'm referring to the brand. I honestly still have a bad taste in my mouth from their pastel pencils. Their pastel pencils are just horrible. And whoever designed their case for their pastel pencils needs to be fired. Disgraceful. Well, I'm not talking about their colored pencils. I'm talking about their pastel pencils. They have so many things wrong with their pastel pencils. I've heard some good things about their colored pencils um, when they came out, but I I won't ever buy Derwent products. The only way that I would consider using Derwent is if they contacted me and said, "Hey, here's here's our pencils, you know, use them or do a review on them." I won't pay money for it. They need to give them to me for free. Oh, speaking of companies and art supplies, last week I was talking about, you know, getting some more Carbothellos, and I talked about how at this point I can't believe that I'm still paying for my Carbothello pencils. And so I did send an email. I sent an email to Carbothello, um, and I heard back a couple days after. I guess I'd emailed the UK team or whatever, and they said that they forwarded it to their people here in Poland. I didn't get an email address, but I haven't heard back. I haven't heard anything for a while. But I was looking through. I was looking through like the videos and stuff where my some of my most popular videos I'm using the Carbothello pastel pencils, and I don't think I've ever produced a video where I don't exclusively state what supplies I'm using. And I yeah, I've sold a lot of Carbothellos. Let's just put it that way. There's no way that I have not contributed to a huge sale in Carbothello pencils. I think I estimated last week when I was talking about it around 500,000, and I think it's twice that, two or three times twice that, because it's not that much, you know. Where can you watch a replay of the live stream from last Friday? Um, I don't think that live stream is. I didn't save that live stream because I was just doing it to hang out and chat. I was just doing that while I worked on my Evolve painting, which now I can finally talk more about now that the sponsored video is out. And if you missed that video, I put it out yesterday. But I'm having a lot of fun oil painting in that program. And I'll be doing more of those Friday live streams, so don't you worry about that. I'll be doing one this Friday, in fact. By the way, anyone still wondering, I'm just still using that 700. Haven't changed colors yet. Sorry if I happen to miss anybody's questions. I'm going back through chat now to try to see if I missed anything. To touch on Sketch's comment about Prismacolors and Polychromos and wax base, oil base, there is some truth in that, but Prismacolors colors aren't inherently not light fast. It's just that probably about a third of them have a lower light fastness. But Polychromos also has, I don't know, maybe about 10 colors. There's still about 10 colors in the Polychromos set that aren't light fast. And technically, there's no such thing as oil-based and wax-based pencils. It's just that what is often referred to as wax-based pencils has a different ratio of wax and oil, in which the wax or the oil percentages, the ratio of oil is a little bit higher, and that's why you get those translucent colors, and the cores of the pencils are harder. They're more dense. But they both have wax and oil in them. That's why you can use them interchangeably. Like you can apply Polychromos over top of Prismacolor and vice versa. Goodness, I'm really wearing this pencil down to a nub. Yeah, Friday live streams will be recorded from now on. Yeah, the last one was just a spur of the moment, kind of working on my Evolve painting. But for the future projects or the future live streams, they'll be saved for all eternity. Okie dokie. I'm skipping the underneath the bridge because it's kind of purple and much darker. So I'm going to treat these sort of like, I'm going to treat them a little bit different than the rest of the bricks. But there's the foundation of all of the bricks. Now, if you remember the next color that we use, it is the 620. And you just want to do a really light layer of this to bring some orange into the bricks. So very lightly, I'm just going to go through and add this color. Am I a fan of K-pop? No, not not really. There's a couple K-pop songs that I've liked in the past, but like Girls' Generation, as cheesy as that sounds, they had a couple songs that I liked. Um, I'm like quite a bit of J-pop though. Perfume, I've always been a fan of Perfume for many, many years now, actually, but I haven't listened to him for a while. I actually did a painting. If you go back, it's like the third or fourth video on my YouTube channel. You go back, you'll see me painting the triple portrait of the J-pop group Perfume. It was actually one of my best performing videos when I started my YouTube channel. I think it, I haven't looked at it in a really long time, but um, after I posted it, another Perfume fan that like runs a Perfume blog or something posted it on their blog, and it was pretty sure it was the first video that ever got over 1,000 views. And so I was pretty excited about that. It got posted on Reddit a couple times as well, and it did okay. I'd be surprised if it was over 10,000 views, though. It's been so long ago. Most of my earlier videos are well below 10,000 views, and there's probably still a number of videos from the beginning of my YouTube channel that haven't even reached 1,000 views. Am I familiar with new pastels? I've heard the name before, but I haven't looked into them, so I don't know anything about them. Is it a different medium, or is it just their name for pastels? How do I sharpen my Carbithillo pencils? I sharpen them with a pencil sharpener. No, I'm just kidding. I use an electric pencil sharpener called Jakar. It's made by Jakar, but there's a number of electric pencil sharpeners that should be more than viable. The Jakar sharpener is pretty high quality. I wasn't afraid to spend money on my pencil sharpener because pencil sharpeners, if you think about it, pencil sharpeners can save you a lot of money on your art supplies. Because if you're using some kind of cheapo crank sharpener and you have to grind through half of your pencil to finally get to a good sharp tip, then you're just grinding away your money. But with the Jakar sharpener, honestly, I can't remember the last time I even broke a pencil. It's been a while since I've broken a pencil, and I don't think I've ever broken a colored pencil. So I know there's having used Prismacolor for many years now, there is no shortage of YouTube videos talking about how bad Prismacolor colored pencils are and how often they break. I've been using the Chakar sharpener for 2 years now. I've never broken a single Prismacolor. And I get super sharp pencils. The best $50 I think I ever spent. New pastels are square sticks. That actually sounds really interesting. Yeah, box cutter and sandpaper is good for sharpening pastel pencils, but you also are cutting off a lot of the core of the pencil to get it to actually get it sharp. You're going to probably cut off a little more than a good sharpener if you think about it. I'm no stranger to using it either. Um, when the pencils get too short, like this black here, uh, to sharpen in my pencil sharpener, then I have to resort to my box cutter as well. But I can just when I am cutting it down and trying to get that nice sharp tip, I can just see half the pencil going in the trash can as I do it. Whereas if you think about it, the distance for the for the electric sharpener, this distance is that you got to be real good to get that angle to minimize the amount of the core of the pencil that you're cutting off, And the machine's just always going to be better than a hand in doing that. Any tips on picking values when you have no reference? Oh, by the way, before I answer that question, I'm using the 105, continuing this layering process. In this color, this is lighter, so we should get real close to what the house looks like now with this color here, with this final color applied. So getting values when you don't have a reference photo, there is there's really no instance in where you can't use a reference photo if you think about it. Because let's say you're doing, start with just landscape first. Say you're creating a landscape from your imagination and you're not sure which values to use. Well, there's a billions of photos of landscapes. And so even if you're not copying that exact reference or collection of references that you have, uh, you still want to collect references and use them as what I refer to as character references. So a character reference is anytime you're using a reference photo, not for what the subject matter is, but for the information it can give you. So for instance, uh, you want to make a landscape, but you want to make it sort of a fantasy type landscape. So maybe you really want to have like this real dramatic sky, with some clouds and really dark values in the sky. Well, go find a reference photo that has a sky as close to what you're envisioning for your own project. And then just don't copy the sky, because obviously you want your work to be original. But there's no need to imagine something that exists and which is also very easy to get a reference for. You don't have to replicate it perfectly, but just use it as a character reference. Same thing with like maybe you want a cool tree in your fantasy landscape, so you go and you check out references of interesting looking trees. And it doesn't have to be photographic reference. It can also just be other people's artwork, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Art is hard enough. You don't need to make it unnecessarily harder for yourself by not using a reference at all. I mean, you can do that. You can always do that. But I would say if you're really focused on, creating something specific, then grabbing character references is always going to be a better option than trying to create something directly from your imagination. There's certain things that you can't create from reference that you know, you sort of have to make up. Like if you're inventing a new creature, then obviously there's an aspect of your imagination that will inherently have to be present in order for you to do that. But even if that is the case, nothing says you can't use the structure of an animal that already exists. Say if your animal is bird-like, there's no reason to exclude references of birds for you to sort of use the anatomy that is already present to sort of make your creations feel more legitimate, feel more real, or feel more possible to exist. So the same is true when it comes to values. But if you were creating something directly from your imagination, then when it comes to sort of mapping out and figuring out your values, what I would say is whatever it is you're drawing, do a do some thumbnail sketches of it and only use black and white. So try to map out what the form of your work is meant to be portraying and map out the big shadows as just very blocked out shapes. Either either it's black and it's a shadow or it's white and it's not. And then from there you can start introducing other values that are in between the black and white range. So you can start something very simple like pure black and white, and then you can introduce other gray tones. It really there's so many there's so many different things, different approaches that you can take with with composition when it comes to values. Oh, thank you, John. Yeah, these bricks take a while. All these bricks are slow process. Appreciate all the questions today, by the way. You guys been on the ball with asking me questions. Appreciate it. You know, honestly, if you guys continue to ask me questions, I'd just be here all day because I could just be here all day asking answering questions. It's my favorite thing to do. I'd finish this project today if you asked me enough questions. Oh, hello, Elena. Thank you so much. I'm glad you've been um, enjoying my content. Absolutely. And if you have any, yeah, just like I was saying, if you have any questions, keep asking. If you got I challenge you. I challenge you, John. If you got a million questions, you better start now because that's a lot. Yeah, see, Diane knows. Diane knows I'm not joking. I challenge you to get banned from my channel. You'd be the first person. Be the first person. If you could if you could ask so many questions that I would even consider banning you, I'll ship you my silver play button. Oh, hey there, Cece. Yeah, a little late, but better late than never. Um, are there certain colors that are harder to make work together? It really depends, which is, kind of a cop out answer. But one of the things that I've always sort of talked about over the years when dealing with color, and you may hear me talk about it quite a bit. The more the more projects that you tune into, and that's color harmony. Color harmony is something that I try to explain without getting too deep into you know academic color theory, because truthfully, I've never taken any academic art color theory type stuff. It's more or less the what I teach is the self-taught. This is what I've discovered over the many years, and uh, I think going the academic route is always an option, but I've always felt like that's too inside the box. It's not really. It doesn't feel practical. And when it comes to using colors, especially colors that you may first look at separated and be like, how can you get these two colors to be in the same picture and not look ridiculous? Really, what it has more to do about is what you're doing with the colors and how they're represented in the image. For instance, I think this is a good example. This project here, this really bright yellow in the windows, it serves a very particular purpose in throughout this project, and that is to create the sensation of the light. Um, if you look at all of the other colors are they're rather subdued and on the cooler side. So we have, these blues and these grays. If you were to go back and watch me do the sky and all of these trees back here, uh, almost every single one of these trees started off with just a cool gray color. It was this 724 color right here, very relatively cool gray, same color as the roof. And um, so the color yellow doesn't really show up anywhere else the way that it does here. I of course use that yellow in the bushes and trees and stuff subtly, but not like in the windows. And the reason that color works is because it has a particular purpose in the image. So that's the first thing that you sort of have to figure out what you're doing with your colors, is you have to identify their purpose. Once you give your colors a purpose, you'll find that it's a little bit easier to use them in the way that you intend, uh, as opposed to just throwing color at something. The other thing that is inherent to the colors that you choose is the values displayed throughout your project as well. Because if you have if you only have 5 colors, but they don't have any variation in value, there's really no way that you can use those 5 colors to create something that's going to be very interesting at all. It's going to look rather bland, no matter how extreme the colors are or not. If you had 5 colors that were just very close in value, no matter how you display them on your paper or canvas, they're going to just look like nothing because it's not really able to show uh, any range throughout the image. And this is why contrast is inherently the most important quality of any artwork. Funny thing about that is that it's actually scientific in the sense of statistical analysis of common people being asked which picture they like the most, and overwhelmingly the higher contrast image is always preferred among any lower contrast images. In spite of detail or complexity, contrast is always the number one factor. And so color is generally irrelevant in that regard. And then the other thing that I was mentioning, color harmony, that I often discuss and demonstrate throughout my work, and you can see this throughout my artwork spanning many years, is that once I establish my color palette, I very rarely deviate away from it. So I think I have about 15 colors of Carbothello that I've used throughout this entire painting. And you see me using those colors and reusing those colors so that it creates color harmony. All the colors match each other. Because I could have grabbed a different color for the bricks on the house. Instead of doing that, I'm reusing the same colors that I used in the trees, the same colors that I used in the sky, and I just keep reusing them. And even though I have to mix them to make the new color that I'm aiming for, that allows the color harmony to exist throughout the project, because the colors match inherently because they're the same colors. All right, I need to do a little bit of blending now, so I'm going to grab my blender and I'm just going to smooth out these colors, sort of finish mixing them. Give me a nice flat one-dimensional color. I have not tried the Derwent Light Fast. Yeah, you have still have quite a few questions to go before you hit your million. The other thing that I do that I think that I need to mention is the structure in which I establish my coloring phases. So the first phase is always the base or foundational layers. Those foundational layers are meant to establish, well, exactly that, the foundation in which I intend on applying more colors and texture on top of. And so in particular with this bridge here, the bridge is a perfect example. The house was a perfect example. I've given no attention to any of the details or the particular texture of all of the bricks here. Instead, I'm ignoring all of that and focusing on what the dominant color and colors of the bridge beneath all of that texture is. And then once I've established that, then I will start introducing the texture and details, which texture and detail is essentially the same thing, because detail is made up of changing textures. And so that's the way that I approach essentially everything that I do, is I first identify what the foundational colors are going to be. And in a lot of ways, that foundation always turns into a gradient of some variation, some kind of gradient. Are shadows always cooler and lights always warm? Um, no, you can have warm shadows. You can have warm shadows. Again, it's it's like a it's like discussing the flavor of food, you know? Some people like their food a little bit extra salty. Some people like their food a little bit extra sweet. You know, rice is a perfect example. Say you're given a bowl of white rice. No context. You have no context. You're sitting there in a white room with a white table and nothing else. And somebody walks in, sits down. No, nobody walks in because the person could even give context. A bowl of rice just appears on the table, plain white rice. And to the right of the bowl is a bottle of soy sauce. And to the left of the bowl is a bowl of sugar. The mixture in which you choose is totally up to you. So having warm shadows is a choice that can be made. It is not, there is no hard rules to shadows and highlights. The reason temperature can change is because in sort of the idea that the temperature is inherently warm in highlights and cooler in shadows is because in general we associate brighter color such as white as being warmer inherently. And so if you have a black and white image, as the highlights become more and more white, we just generalize that that's warmer because light creates heat. And the absence of light tends to be much cooler. But if you're talking about warm and cool colors, well, again, the brighter colors tends to be considered warmer just inherently because of the value. But if you were to take a neon light, say a neon blue light, shine it on an object, that blue light would create a blue highlight, and that would be a warm blue. Neon blue is considered to be a warm blue. But again, generalizing, blue is blue leans to be more of a cooler color. So you have to ask yourself, is your highlight cool because it's blue, or is it warm because it's brighter? So I don't think there's a one size fits all when it comes to highlights and shadows. And I think that it's best to try, I think it's better to avoid the um, the sort of hard line in the description of shadows and highlights, and instead leave it in the generality that it actually exists. Because these are non-specific examples, which means that the rule can't be specific. It has to be general. So in general, shadows are cooler, highlights are warmer, but not always. Because if you say always, I promise you there's an artist out there that will prove you wrong by creating warmer shadows. And there's plenty of examples. that you'd be able to find. Yeah, no problem. If you want to, if you want to play around with the temperature of shadows and highlights, if you know Photoshop or if you know Photoshop like program, go in there and adjust the color temperature for the shadows to as warm as you can go and do the opposite with the highlights and see what it gives you. In fact, I might do that myself after this live stream just to just out of curiosity. Okie dokie. So there's the foundation of all of the bricks. Now I want to start putting in some of the shadow regions, the darker areas. I'm going to use the 724 for that. So right here on the steps, these side faces of the steps are darker. So I'm just going to put this in. Easy peasy. This sidewalk here you can see is really well lit up. There's a lot of yellow, a lot of orange on it. Very, very bright. So I'm going to just leave that totally alone. And instead, start shading pretty much the entire bridge, actually, if you look at it. The light being on the back side of it makes sense that this bridge would be much, much darker. In fact, this bridge should be very similar to the value that you see on the back side of the house. So I'm just gonna scribble this color in here and keep moving on. And I'll actually fill in this part of the bridge too. Since this area is really dark, I figured it'd just be best to do the base layer with a darker color. Oh, you know what I just thought of, John? When I remember looking, I remember looking at these pictures. I can't remember the artist, but he did these relatively new, uh, certainly like I think it was back in the 60s, maybe 70s. I can't remember the artist's name, unfortunate, but pretty well known. He did these paintings where he used warm colors in the shadows. Actually, he used warm blue. It was a painting of a pool, like a pool at a house or something. And it was just really cool the way that he established the lighting in his scenes because the blue that he used was really warm. And the reason I know these particular about these particular paintings is because when I took my intro to uh, oil painting class back in community college, uh, my my art teacher, she showed us a bunch of, I mean, she showed us tons and tons of paintings, but I remember she showed us that particular painting or a couple of his particular paintings to address the topic of color temperature. And yeah, so I wish I knew the artist's name or even the name of the painting. I just recall it was two paintings of a pool, and there was one with I want to say a girl in a white bikini, and it was like set in the 60s or something. And it was just unique the way that he used warm shade of blue to create the contrast of the shadow and highlight. Great questions, by the way. Slowing down though. Got to pick up the pace if you're going to hit that million. It'll be fun once we get down to the water. Just have the water left. Probably save. Yeah, I'll probably end up saving the water for the very last part of this project. Yeah, Aussie. Yeah, that may be a little bit harder nowadays. You type pool girl white bikini. We're gonna have like 15 million Instagram images to go through. Yeah, even with painting, probably. Have I considered offering Zoom classes? I do one-on-one lessons. I don't advertise them, but I do private Zoom lessons. I do. Working from the back and moving forward is always the best approach. Um, from my experience, I'd say that it's helpful. I almost always work from the background and then work my way forward in my projects. I do find it to be an easier way to avoid haloing. Haloing, of course, is where you're trying to work up towards what you'd filled in. A perfect example is yesterday when I was dealing with the haloing of the bushes. And that's because I put the bushes in before I put the house in. And so I had to sort of fix that halo effect. It's not such a big deal when the object is really small, like these bushes. But if I were to do it on a portrait or something, then it could be quite a headache to deal with. I've always liked putting in the background first for that reason, and I pretty much do that exclusive. It's actually kind of funny that with the evolve lessons that I'm always putting the objects in before I fill in the background, but there's nothing happening in the background right now in any of my paintings. It's just a flat color, so it's a little bit easier. Not only is it a flat color, but all of the edges are sharp. There's no blurry effect, no depth of field happening, so it's pretty easy. But with pretty much any other project, I'm going to be putting the background first. I would say with landscapes, there's no option. With landscapes, don't even do it. Like if you're doing a landscape, don't ever work from anywhere except the furthest point, and then work your way forward. I just if I were to put the house in and the bridge in, and then try to do the background, I would quit. I'd give up. It would just be an absolute nightmare. Like, why would I want to work all this stuff in blending and trying to smooth stuff out when I have all this stuff to work around? Like, it would just be a nightmare. I just can't imagine for an instance that that would be a good idea. Group Zoom lessons. Why, I would definitely consider a group Zoom lesson. But I already share everything I can think of during these lessons here. So let me ask you a question back. What would be the benefit of a group Zoom lesson? I mean, if there's a number of you that would like to do a private group lesson, uh, Zoom lesson, let me know. I'd be happy to do it. But what would you want? What would you want from me that I'm not already offering? I guess that's the biggest thing. Because you know the art club. If you're in the art club, if you wanted to jump into Discord and actually talk to me, not type to me, you're more than welcome to do that. I know I did it. I've been doing it for a while, but nobody really seemed to be into it much. You could be talking to me right now if you wanted to, but it was just that nobody was really utilizing it, so I didn't think that it. I just didn't think anybody wanted to do it. Some of these areas on the bricks are a bit darker than even this color, so I'll be using the 760 for those really dark parts. Any tips on composition, building interesting scene? Well, if you're not familiar with like the why am I totally forgetting the word what is the word, like the 3x3 grid, there's a word for it. What is that 3x3 grid? I'm forgetting the name. I just had it. I was just about to say it and then I forgot it. Somebody in chat will help me out. Come to my rescue. Um, Gosh darn it! What is the name of that? Uh, but that's the first recommendation, is to understand the purpose of that, and then uh, explore other compositional ideas that other people have tried. Again, I mean, there's just no reason to reinvent the wheel when it comes to rule of thirds. Thank you, thank you, Diane. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. So the rule of thirds, I use that. I use that a lot because it's really helpful to get get a composition really quickly without like a lot of complexity to it. And so that would be my first recommendation if you don't know the rule of thirds, but the rule of thirds is going to take you a long way. Like you almost don't need anything other than that to help you utilize placement. The other thing with composition that is it can be a lot of fun is playing around with your horizon line. Horizon lines at different levels of your paper that can yield a lot of unique perspectives within your work with really nothing other than changing one horizontal line. Okay, Yulia. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I do with my lessons here. Is I do two days of lessons, then you have rest of the week, the whole rest of the week to um, work on it. You can always send your work in progresses into Discord. Uh, if you're struggling with something, you have questions. I try to be as active in Discord as time allows. I have, the notifications pop up when I see a comment and stuff. So, alrighty. Now for some of the darker areas. Where's the Discord link? Um, when Diane has a second, I think she'll send a Discord link for me. This is the 760 color. I'm going to come through here and do some of these darker areas. Um, by the way, big shout out to my only moderator, Diane. She's fantastic. She took on the task of being moderator without ever asking to be. I just simply I just simply bestowed it upon her, and she has graciously accepted the role and the responsibility for no other reason than to just be great. I don't know if you guys heard that. Somebody rang my doorbell. They are about to be ignored. I hope it's not a courier. Actually, I should go check. 1 second. I couldn't tell what it was. He left before I got a chance to open the door. Am I on every Monday and Tuesday? Actually, I'm on every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. As of this week, I will be streaming on Fridays. Probably not every Friday, but I'd say at least 2 Fridays a month. But Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday, every, every Monday through Thursday at the same time, I stream. Friday streams will be a little different. I'll be oil painting as part of my homework for the Evolve program, which I made a video about, and it went up yesterday. So if you haven't checked it out or you're interested in learning more about that, then check it out, or just go to their website. Let's see. Any tips on how to simplify hair? Whenever I try to make hair in simple shapes, it kind of looks weird. Oh yeah. So hair is one of my favorite subjects. When it comes to hair, you have to focus. Like, are you talking about? First off, let me ask you a question to clarify. Are you talking about drawing your own hair, like drawing your own hairstyles and finding simplified shapes to create them, or are you talking about replicating a reference photo and filling hair in as like a drawing, like with texture and everything? Or let me first clarify, because otherwise I might give you an answer that you're not looking for. How long did it take to sketch this project that I'm working on now? It took zero time. It took zero time to sketch this project. With the projects that I do tutorials and lessons on, I don't have the time to sketch these out. So what I do is I create line art in Photoshop, and then I use that line art to I just use that line art and transfer it right onto my pastel map using the technique that I laid out in my video previously. I have a video that I put out just a few weeks ago on how to transfer line art and stuff. I use that exact method to get my line art onto my pastel map, because if I took the time to sketch this out, I probably have to spend about 90 minutes to 2 hours, getting put there, and it would just be a mess and just take way too long. And I just don't have that kind of time. And if anyone is interested, the line art for this project you can get by joining the art club. All of the projects that I live stream Monday through Thursday are art club projects. The line art reference photo and the video library for every part of the project is listed there. I have links in the description for it. So yeah. Did I miss any other question? Oh, the hair thing. So more like drawing. Um, well, if you're working on like drawing shapes of hair or like quick sketches or cartoon style, um, there really is no other way to do it than to practice and to break down the shapes of other people's work. So you want to you want to find you want to see what other people are doing. Take the time to break down their shapes. That will help you identify what shapes create what. Um, there's there's this artist here on YouTube. His name's Ethan Deckert. He makes he makes brilliant tutorials, brilliant drawing tutorials. In he uses like this alter ego, and he's he's quite funny, but he has like a bunch of tutorials where he breaks down shape structure in a certain artist's drawing, and that's what you want to do. You want to emulate sort of what his tutorials talk about. A lot of his tutorials talk about these really broad shapes that you can use to build structure. And hair is the same sort of thing. You want to find the look that you're going for, which shouldn't be too hard, and then just break down their shapes. Find their shapes that they're doing to create what you're looking at. Yeah. Yeah, Ethan is great. He's one of the he's probably one of my favorite YouTube artists. Oh yeah, that's funny. It does kind of look like a dinosaur. This looks like cartoon mouse or something. This looks like a seahorse with like a plant. A dog, a dog chasing a squirrel. This is the dog chasing a squirrel. That's what that is right there. This is 100% like a stegosaurus or something. That's hilarious. Unintentional blank shapes. All right, now that that color's all laid in, I'm just going to blend all this out. Andrew Tesler. That name sounds really familiar. The funny thing is, like, I don't, I don't actually subscribe to any of these people on YouTube. I have like, I have like four YouTube subscriptions. Basically, not subscribed to anything. And for the most part, I don't watch art stuff on YouTube. almost almost never watch art stuff on YouTube. My primary YouTube entertainment is chess and uh, chess, and then like random stuff that YouTube recommends me. Like the past week and a half, for whatever reason, I've been watching disc golf. Never played disc golf in my entire life. Never once had any interest in disc golf in my entire life. YouTube, all I see is disc golf on my YouTube page now. And so I've been watching it. I'm YouTube could just get me interested in anything. Actually, the reason I play chess competitively now is because YouTube 3 years ago, YouTube no 2 years ago, no yeah, it was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. YouTube recommended the U.S. Chess Championship live stream, and I was like, oh, I've never watched chess. What does this look like? What does competitive chess look like as a live stream? Ended up watching the entire chess championship, and I've been playing chess since then. So January 2019. All thanks to YouTube and their recommendations. Oh my gosh. Yeah, YouTube recommending. So I've been watching um disc golf. I've been watching this guy go to yard sales. it just it's just ridiculous. People going to yard sales, people playing disc golf. I've watched so much disc golf in the last week and a half that I actually recognize names now of like professional disc golf players. I've watched enough yard sale videos uh, that I could probably start an eBay store. It's just crazy. It's crazy. YouTube recommendations is just it's getting out of hand. I have no life because of YouTube. Make my living on YouTube, and then in my spare time I end up gosh darn watching somebody buy baseball cards at a yard sale. You'd like to play chess with me? Uh, I'm Unmask Art on chess.com if you want to send me a friend request. I think I'm just going to finish blending this and then add some of the additional color on the top side of the bricks where the light is hitting and call it a day. This is pretty good progress for the foundation of the bridge. Next Monday, I'll finish all of this rocks, all the bricks and rocks and stuff. And then next Tuesday, we'll actually next Tuesday we'll get everything done and maybe even finish it. Actually, now that I think about it, so we'll probably finish this project next week. Well, thank you, Paloma. I very much appreciate that. Yeah, I agree, Diane. Finish such a long project like this. It's almost sad that it's coming to an end. But this has been a really fun project and a really fun one. Maybe we'll do another master copy in the future as well. Pick something outside of the landscape spectrum. Maybe like a Rembrandt or Vermeer or something, classic old master. That could be that could be quite fun. I actually always wanted to do a replication of the Milkmaid because I saw that piece hanging up in the Rijks Museum in Amsterdam when I went there a couple years ago. And the lighting, goodness, it's just it's so good. It just felt so natural. The unfortunate side of that idea is that finding a picture online of the milkmaid that even resembles the perfection of that artwork is impossible. I've looked at hundreds of photographs of that painting, and it just looks like garbage. Doesn't even come close to how good it actually is in person. What is the next best paper for pastels? None. It's either pastel matte or nothing. I don't. Well, let me step that back just a tiny bit. Soft pastels and pastel pencils, they're different. They work different. They feel different. You apply them differently. You blend them differently. When it comes to soft pastels, if you are exclusively using soft pastels, then you can get away with a number of papers. One paper, second best to pastel matte, will be the Lux Archival by Aliona Nicholson. Then you have the honeycomb textured pastel matte from Canson, another reasonable paper to get familiar with the medium. And just to reiterate, I'm only talking about soft pastel, not pastel pencil. Um, and then you can also use sandpaper. So UART or Fisher sandpaper. Very good for soft pastels. Now, for pastel pencils, don't don't use anything other than pastel matte. The 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 problem with using anything other than pastel matte with pastel pencils is that you immediately degrade the quality and effectiveness that you can get from the medium. Pastel pencils, when you work on pastel matte, can be layered indefinitely. The subtlety of the changes that you can make will never stop on pastel matte. And that is not matched on any other paper. Not even close. It's not even close. It cannot be stressed enough. Pastel pencils, it's just not worth it. Honestly, if I didn't have access to pastel matte, I wouldn't even use pastel pencils because it wouldn't even be worth it. And I don't mean to be dramatic about it, but the reality is it's so different between the papers that I can't justify using pastel pencils on anything other than pastel matte. I should do another Ghibli one. Actually, I was actually thinking about that yesterday because my neighbor Totoro is also, I love that one. I thought about doing that, doing something from that. I really really love the scene where they're standing at the bus stop and it's raining. Love that scene. Oh, okay, Ozzy. Yeah, you take care. Um, let's see here. Oh, that's good to hear, Susan. Yeah, I look forward to seeing yours when you're done. Yeah, I agree, Yulia. Finding a reproduction of the milkmaid might be a better option. How do I know when to stop? Um, Stopping is subjective. It's purely subjective. And I think that uh, part of knowing, sorry, I'm going to try to continue instead of just talking. I grab my yellow. This is the 695 yellow. And I'm going to add it to the tops of the bricks and stuff. Knowing when to stop partially comes from experience. And it's something that can be developed a little bit easier when you've produced a plan. So one of the things that I always stress with art in general is the planning process. And I've even created several tutorials just discussing the planning process. Um, and to sort of give you an idea, like a quick synopsis of what a planning process might look like for this project here. When I came across the reference photo for this project and decided to do it, the first thing that I always do is I look at the reference photo. I get very familiar with every detail in the reference photo. I never not do that. And this same sort of idea extends beyond using reference, because if I'm doing something from imagination, just because it's from the imagination doesn't mean that I didn't think about it or I didn't analyze what purpose I had for going forward with the project. So those things still happen whether you're working directly from a reference photo or you're creating something from your imagination. You have to think about every detail of the project to some degree, at least. You have to have the idea in your head. As soon as with something from imagination, you might do something like thumbnail sketches to sort of map out your composition and all of that, and maybe even your light sources. After I get familiar with what I want it to look like, whether it's an original from my imagination or if it's from a reference photo, I always spend time focusing on what I want it to look like. I'm using the 620 now to add the orange to the light. And I do all of this before I ever touch pencil to paper or even pick my colors. I always just think about it. Thinking about it, I think, is probably just overlooked a lot. It's sort of visualizing the process. And when it came to this project, the thing that I think about um, is after I've familiarized myself with the actual image, I just think about the process, like step by step. And from this, going back, I started with just the colors, just the gradients of the sky. That's where we started with this project. No clouds. The clouds exist on top of the sky, so there's no reason to involve them. So I thought, well, the easiest thing to do is just get those soft, nice pink, yellow, blue gradient in the sky. Ignore everything else. And then from there, putting in the clouds, putting in some of these distant trees, get those soft textures and colors put in. And then from there, build on top of that layer with the trees that start to get brighter and start to come closer. And once I got those put in, then it was putting in the trees that were brightest and closest. Once I had all that in, everything in the back was completely done. All of that was filled in. So it was time to move on to the house. Well, I did do these bushes down here as well as part of the close-up trees. And so, again, once I get to the house, I sort of start that process over again. So now that I'm to the house and it's a little bit more complex, I break down the complexity. Well, I'll do the roof first. And then once I have the roof, then I'll do the bricks. And once I have the bricks, then I'll do the windows. So that's the way that I think about it. I think about it in steps, not just for the purpose of teaching it so that everybody can follow along, but also for the simplicity of it. Keep things simple. I like to keep things simple. There's no reason to complicate something that's already complex. So that's sort of my mindset going in. Um, and it's that planning phase that a lot of people overlook when they're learning to do art. Just using white, uh, because they think that artists just pick up a pencil and start drawing and create beautiful things. And there may be instances where that is the reality, but it's a lot more about the thought process, a lot more about the strategic planning, and then the execution of it. Planning is a huge part of creating good art. And my art mentor always used to say that there's no such thing as bad art, just bad planning. And sort of, I continue that sentiment in my own teaching because I find it to be very true. And so I spend a considerable amount of my time planning for that reason. Yeah, a lot of people overlook the planning. Most of the funny thing is with that planning process, I've had many students, and I do private lessons over the years, many private lessons, and I would say aside from two lessons of the hundreds that I've done over the years, um, only two of them was me actually drawing or coloring anything at all. The 99% of my other lessons was me talking through the planning process for the project that the student wanted to do. There was one student that I had that I actually drew the picture that they wanted alongside them. So that's what they wanted. They wanted to both draw the project. They wanted me to draw the project. They wanted to follow along. Um, and then there was one other student that wanted to color trees and foliage and wanted me to demonstrate the process of creating those kind of textures to improve their trees and foliage look. But all the other ones were just planning because that's really all that they needed. They just needed, I'm using the white again here. Really, it was just the planning process that they needed clarified in order to progress. See, the thing about the way I think about art is very analytically. The way that I teach art is very analytical. I don't do like the touchy feely stuff. Like I'm not concerned about what you're feeling. And that's not the way that I approach art. I don't try to feel the light, you know what I mean? I analyze it, think about it critically, and then I demonstrate it. If there's something that I want to produce, I don't have to like take psychedelic drugs to try to get in the mood. I just I just I just do it step by step. Um, and so the description that I would generally use to explain my process is algorithmic. When I want to replicate something, I break it down into an algorithmic process so that not only I can do it, but I can simply explain the process to somebody else and they can follow along. I don't think that at any point art needs to be a mystery. I think that anybody can do it. I try to break it down in those ways so that you don't have to you don't have to feel special things to replicate something. I don't do any of that touchy feely stuff. See, I think I'm going to add a little bit more yellow here. The 695. Just bring a little bit more warmth back into some of the light. I'm going to use some of the 642 to help with some of the shades of color, like underneath the grass and around the lamp posts. Yeah, yeah. I think actually a lot of people learn just really anything in that manner, Diane. That's the way that I pick up on things. If there's certain aspects of anything where experience is necessary, but where a step by step sort of breakdown can get you moving on the road that allows you to gather experience. I don't think that you need to fumble around with a bunch of stuff. I don't think the experience you get from doing that is inherently good. So there's plenty of mistakes that I've made with art over the years that if you wanted to just learn yourself, you just wanted to learn art yourself and run through the mud, I don't think that experience is going to teach you anything special that you wouldn't otherwise get by skipping it. And if I can get people to skip some of those things, that's sort of my intention because I've lived through a lot of it. All of the little mistakes and all of the things that I wish I could have skipped. I don't think that taught me anything except that nobody needs to go through them. Any tips on fire? Um, there's nothing particular unique to fire, but if you're just act like fire is essentially hair, actually. It's made up of squiggly diamonds and correct color and value. So the approach with fire is nothing unique. If you analyze what makes fire look like fire, you'll find squiggly diamonds and you'll find particular colors at particular values. So take those take those unique colors, take those unique shapes, mush them together, and you'll produce fire. Really, the thing with fire is that it is an object that is meant to establish a light. Fire's meant to appear to glow or to emit light. And a lot of the context of light isn't the object itself, but the objects around it. So, for instance, these windows, if I were to erase everything except this little rectangle window, nobody would guess it's a window. They would think that it is a brown design, like a light brown design with like yellow paper or something in it. Um, Nobody would be like, "Oh, that's a window," because without the context of everything around it, you don't know it's a window, and you also don't know that it's emitting light. The reason it appears to emit light is because the surrounding objects around it give it the context of there's light coming from it because everything else around it is darker. The scene is the scene is darker. Same thing with the sidewalk here. Once I put in once I put in the darker value alongside these sidewalks here, the brighter stuff appears to be light. So it's really the context of the colors that create that light source. Alrighty. Well, I think I think I'm gonna call it a day. The the whole project there. Uh, Tomorrow is the colored pencil project that will continue. But like I said, I think we'll probably finish this up next week. Monday. Monday, I'm going to keep working on the bridge. I feel like it needs to be a little bit darker. Uh, and then, put in the little cracks and everything that make it look like rocks. And then possibly, yeah, Monday, finish the bricks and then base layers for the foliage, the remaining foliage. I think I live streamed a little bit longer than I normally, but that's because you guys kept asking such great questions. I mean, I feel like I talked for 2 hours straight. So I'm gonna get myself some water. I'm gonna relax for a bit, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care. Peace.